All right, so folks, there's a lot going on here. So I want to be very clear that there is a lot going on in this story. This is being spread like motherfucking wildfire in right-wing circles. There is very little actual information. There is extremely little actual information. There's extremely little evidence, and there's extremely little logic in the story being spread like wildfire. And so there's Fox News did several segments on this, and I want to play this, and I want to respond to a lot of the claims being made here, because a lot of this, folks, is bullshit, and a lot of this, people are trying to tie this story into the struggle for trans rights in this country, as if this has anything to do with transgender people. And so I really want to point out just how horrible this whole thing is, and how giant the propaganda machine for the right is, and how it is still working, chugging along just fine without Donald Trump. So anyway, there was a situation in Loudoun County where apparently, according to reports, now again, there's very little information. So from what I understand, there was a school board meeting where someone wanted to talk about how their child was sexually assaulted in a bathroom. And so they're trying to claim that it's because of transgender people, but I don't think that there's any transgender people involved. It doesn't seem like there's any transgender people involved in this whole situation, but they're trying to make this into a big anti-trans story. So let's watch.
According to new reporting in the Daily Wire, a 9th grade girl was sexually assaulted at Stonebridge High School in Loudoun County, Virginia in May. A boy allegedly wearing a skirt apparently.
Now again, according to the story, it says a boy allegedly wearing a skirt. What does that mean? Like, is there evidence of that? No. Like, what does that mean? And also, what does that have to do with transgender people? Seriously, I'm asking, like, what is that? It sounds like they just made that detail up to me. Like, Max! It sounds like they just made the detail up to make this a giant anti-trans story. Yes, it is horrible when people get sexually assaulted in bathrooms, right? I've been in situations like that, and I'm trans. So what does that tell you about this whole thing? It also tells you, right, that sexual assault happens, and we need to work on that. We need to raise a society of men and boys that don't fuck around like a bunch of fucking lunatics, right? When you look at sexual assault, right, it is far more likely for a man to sexually assault someone than a transgender person. I'm just sorry. It's just facts. I'm sorry. Disproportionately by a giant percentage. But again, they're going to try to make this an anti-trans story, even though there's no trans people involved.
Apparently went into the girl's bathroom and sexually assaulted this girl. The boy was arrested for forcible sodomy, and the counts are horrifying. This month, the boy was arrested again for allegedly assaulting a different girl at a different school. At a school board meeting in June, the superintendent of Loudoun County Schools, a man called Scott Ziegler, said the school board had no records of this assault. You should know that at the same moment all of this was happening, the man who wanted to report the sexual assault of his daughter in a bathroom by a boy wearing a skirt, at that same moment, the same school district was pushing a policy for students identifying as, quote, transgender, and would allow students to use any bathroom they want.
So again, look how they're trying to... So the allegation, right, unproven, is that a man was wearing a skirt, or a boy, rather, right? Like, it's not a trans woman went into the bathroom and sexually assaulted someone. That's not what happened. It is a boy, allegedly, with no proof whatsoever, wearing a skirt, whatever that means, by the way, like, I don't know what that means, went in and sexually assaulted someone. If they're a boy, where's the trans people involved? What does this have to do with transgender people? Again, it's horrible that this happened, but the idea that they're going to try to turn this into a giant anti-trans brigade, I saw this start yesterday, and it's already on Fox News. That's how the propaganda machine works in this country, right? Things can get from the internet, like, to Fox News within a matter of hours. And now this morning, it's a giant story.
Essentially, did we characterize the story correctly? Is that what you think happened?
Yes, this story is one of the most disturbing I've ever worked on. It raises the possibility that the Loudoun County Public Schools covered up the rape of a 14-year-old girl at the hands of a boy wearing a skirt in order to pass a school policy that Democrats were adamant about passing. And as a result of concealing that, a second girl was raped last week And to prevent all of this from coming out, potentially, they arrested the father of the victim, tried to put him in jail, and he's now the face of domestic terrorism, listed individually by the National School Boards Association, all for coming to that meeting. He didn't come to that.
So I want to be very clear, right? That sounds horrifying. And that's the thing about this is a sad story. And this is a story that normally we should all be unified in saying, God damn, this sucks. But for whatever reason, Fox News and the right want to make this a giant anti-trans story when there are no trans people involved, right? And that's the thing about this. This is just fascinating to me. It's like there's no trans people involved, and yet it's the trans people that have to suffer as a result. Right? Like, that's the thing. And that's what it always boils down to. Cisgender people do bad things, and transgender people have to pay the price. And that is not fair to anybody. That's not fair at all. And let's assume it was a trans woman. What does that have to do with 99.9999999% of other trans people that don't do these things? Right? But there is no transgender person involved in this story as it's reported right now. Right? And so that's why it's fucking fascinating. Now, again, the school participating in a cover-up, that's horrible. Right? For the reasons, I don't know what their reasons are. We can't prescribe intent to that. It seems like, again, when the right wing is using the propaganda machine this heavily and this quickly, it's really important to not really assume any of these details are correct. Wait until there's further investigations on this one, because you just can't trust Fox News. I mean, like, just for the eventual right-wingers that are going to hound this segment, I don't trust mainstream news in general, right? So, but either way, when you see propaganda go from, like, the fucking, from the farm to the table this quickly, there's something fishy going on.
Meeting because he's a bigot. A lot of people thought they knew that guy. They trotted out his picture, his embarrassing picture with his belly hanging out and his bloody face. They all thought they knew him. They knew nothing about him. This was a caring father who was involved because of something very personal that happened to his daughter. And if they would have shut up and listened to him for 30 seconds, they would have been heartbroken. Instead, they demeaned him, they arrested him, and they tried to put him in jail.
So anyway, we have another clip where they're talking about it on all the shows, Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham.
This has been a crazy 3 months, but basically my daughter was sexually assaulted at the end of school in May of last year, and I went to the school board meeting, to see what was going on because I had seen all this crazy stuff on TV.
And think about this situation again. This father, assuming the situation is legitimate, right, which I have no reason to assume it's not legitimate, right, this father is suffering, right? Their family is suffering. And now their suffering is being used for profit and to further a propaganda campaign. Now, this father may very well be an anti-trans bigot, and they very well may be trying to use this story to attack transgender people on a personal level. But either way, imagine the scenario where your family is suffering, and then giant mainstream news moguls like say, "Oh, you want to, we'll give you $0, but we're going to use your story, your family's tragic suffering, and we're going to profit off of it, and we're going to use it in our propaganda campaign and crusade against minority rights in this country." Like, imagine the exploitation going on here on behalf of Fox News against this family. That kind of shit really fucks with me.
To see what was going on after my daughter had been assaulted, and there was some crazy stuff being talked about, people for things, against things. I wasn't there for any, I'm good with gay people, cross-gender people, everybody, anybody who wants.
So, okay, that's it. I haven't watched this clip yet. So, again, this guy seems like he's just being exploited. Like, he just happened to go to a school meeting where they were talking about a specific subject, and he just wanted to have his own concern be raised, right? So it seems like, I don't know, it seems like this guy is just being exploited and manipulated, and this whole thing is just really unfortunate and really tragic. And again, right-wing propaganda, right, really, 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 really disgusting stuff that they're going to exploit this person to use for their crusade against minority rights in this country.
Cross-gender people, everybody, anybody who wants to be a good American, I'm good with. I went there to find out why our children weren't safe. We were under the impression from the prosecutor that this sexual predator was being held on in-house arrest with an ankle monitor and would not return to school until these court sessions were done. That if I wanted justice for my daughter, that I needed to keep my mouth quiet and not speak out, because in order to get justice for my daughter, which is the most important thing to me, of course, was to not come out and let justice prevail.
See, now I have a problem with that. Like, this story sounds horrible, right? And that's the thing about it, is that, like, it is such a clearly horrible story that anyone who sees this is going to go like, God damn, this is horrifying. And then when Fox News and the right-wing propaganda machine is going to use this story to insert, like, a fake solution, right? Yes, yes. Right? A cisgender boy sexually assaulted a presumably cisgender woman, right? Let's turn that into, we hate the trans people. What? Like, not a sensible narrative, right? That they hate, like, toxic masculinity and rape culture because they're anti-rape culture. They hate the idea that men and boys, maybe society isn't raising them correctly. Maybe they're a little bit out of control. Maybe, it's possible. They hate that idea. Even though that is way, way more of a culprit than any, like, there is no trans person involved.
That's really scary, you know, that our government is going to weaponize themselves against parents, and they're using my video across the nation to spread fear. That's wrong. I'm not a bully. I'm not a racist. I love everyone. I love this country.
All right,
and
Scott,
I want better stuff for it.
So again, this person in this video says he has no problem with trans people, but his story right now is being circulated like wildfire online and far-right spaces as a way to attack trans people. If you look at all the reporting on this, everyone's like, oh, the trans people have to go. They can't be in the... There was no trans person involved. So, what? It's horrifying. It's horrifying. And imagine being in that father's position. You want to go on the news. You want to talk about your story. You want to make sure people know that there's a cover-up going on. But imagine the price you feel like you have to pay. Like, my story is going to be used to attack and further a hate campaign against millions of people. All I want to do is make sure that my daughter gets justice. And now I'm being manipulated by news media, and my story is being used in culture wars to attack millions of people who did nothing wrong, right? Imagine what he's going through. He probably doesn't understand the implications of this. He probably is just more so interested in justice for his daughter, which I understand. If I were in this situation, I would want to go on the news media to discuss this situation, right? And that's the thing about it that's really just disgusting from top to bottom, is the right-wing news media will do anything, and they will stop at nothing to make you hate people that you know nothing about, that you've never met. That's Fox News. That is the right-wing propaganda machine. And this all happened in about 24 hours. This story went from no one knowing anything to all over Fox News within 12 to 24 hours. It's ridiculous. And again, I hope that the father gets justice. Whatever's going on in the school boards, whatever's going on with this cover-up is ludicrous, to be honest. But either way, the alleged details with the skirt or whatever, where does that come from? Who made that allegation? I don't know. Either way, it's ridiculous, and the whole thing is ludicrous. And again, let's assume the story is true, which I have no reason to believe it's not true. There's no reason at all to believe that the whole situation never happened as it is. There is no reason at all to believe that trans people have anything to do with it either, right? But again, the idea that the news media is going to use and abuse people like this just for their own personal political gain is just ridiculous. So I needed to weigh in on that one.